Hola amigos de Final Fantasy Tactical Latinos. Este video es para mostrarles un poco de lo que está trabajando un amigo, que él es un programador que además eh, trabaja en realizar un motor de juego de tipo RPG bastante basado o similar a Final Fantasy Tactics y otros proyectos. Así que pues vamos a ver el video.
Hi, my name is Scott Overman, and welcome to the Tecthical Kickstarter. Tecthical is a strategy RPG engine that can generate content for Windows, Mac, and Linux. The first iteration of this project was written over 2 years ago by Jean-Andre Santoni, also known as Kivitar. To help this project out, I began writing tools to deal with some of the more complicated graphical elements that are the hallmarks of this type of game. The result of that is the Sprite Animation tool. This tool allows you to develop your animations, your characters, outside of the engine. It does that by delivering a simple, human-readable file format. The purpose of this Kickstarter is to finish these tools. One of the tools is a control panel application that allows you to actually edit the games. Finishing this tool is the primary focus of the Kickstarter. That requires code to finish writing a reference implementation game as well. Ultimately, this program allows a casual user to go directly to the part of the game they want to edit, spend what time they have there, and make meaningful changes and additions to their game. For instance, if you want to start developing a script for your game, you can develop conversations within the context of this program. Another example is the concept of game mechanics. You can develop all of these formulas and test them without ever turning the game engine on. So then the question is, why develop games like this for PCs in this day and age? And the answer is, because there aren't many of them. Developing any game from scratch is difficult. However, the amount of data that is attached to these types of games is so massive that it's very difficult to organize. In other words, if you develop a game like this from scratch, you'll be spending a lot of time organizing that data so that it can be meaningfully used in the actual game. This takes valuable time away from working on any innovation you may have for a game in this genre. So, what if you didn't have to worry about that organization part? What if it was done for you? In such a situation, you can focus on the things that you actually have a passion for, so that those things turn out to be amazing. Because the PC market isn't saturated with these types of games, there's an exciting opportunity to do new things with a proven formula. For those of you not familiar with the genre, one of the beautiful things that it allows you to do is to tell a story using the characters as actors on a stage. It's one of my long-term goals to have anybody who has a story that they want to tell be able to use this set of tools to tell that story easily. Furthermore, because I've already developed a Unicode font tool, you can tell that story in any language that you like. And because the Unicode specification plans for this eventuality, you can type in a language of your own design and have it display properly in-game. So, what are the rewards? If you pledge $10, you'll get a license to use all of the tools that are associated with this project, both now and in the future. You'll also receive a very special thanks badge and an entry in the special thanks section of the credits crawl for the reference implementation game. In addition to being present in the reference implementation game and the contributors portal, any game using this engine will have access to an API to allow them to show an appropriate badge for your user account. The API will also give the games the ability to award you badges, and pursuant to that, you can choose which badge you want to show in which place at the contributors portal. As this is mostly a Kickstarter to develop software, the more that you pledge, the more ability you have to change things within the reference implementation game that will get handed out as the default for games in this engine. There are pledge levels for adding priority character names, items, recruitable characters, and even a custom character class with a skill set of your design. Furthermore, if you'd like to design an in-game feature like crafting, there's a pledge level for that. The only restriction is that there's a time limit on how much time I'll be spending working on that. That time limit is a business week for each of these pledged features. features. And finally, there is a pledge level to add an engine level feature or a software level feature. In other words, if you really like the sprite animation tool, but you would like there to be a particle engine incorporated as that would be this pledge. The time limit for these pledged features is 2 business weeks apiece. For this project to be a success, I need your help on a number of levels. First, please help me get the word out. Second, please pledge. And third, if this Kickstarter is successful, please consider making something a year from now when this project is delivered. If this Kickstarter doesn't get successfully funded, then a lot of stories will go left untold. In the context of PC gaming, we generally have the ability to choose which types of games we play, and even what kind of customization those games have. We don't yet have that ability for this genre. Furthermore, this type of game has traditionally lacked the kind of end game that a lot of people look forward to in games of this generation. This engine, however, allows you to duel against other players. In other words, games in this engine have the ability right out of the box to deal with this lack of end game or side game content. One of the stretch goals that I'm really excited about and would be grateful for the opportunity to program is the ability to have inter-game duels as well. Now, because these games in this engine all use the same database structure, provided that the games actually use those data abstractions, it's very easy to line up the game mechanics, the characters, the graphics, and put them together in a brand new fashion. The stretch goal will provide code at the server level to accomplish this. Configuration data in the database may also be used to affect the game balance of this code. Ultimately, when the question of content arises in your game, for instance, after someone has actually beaten the game, well, what is there left to do? If that stretch goal is reached, the engine will provide a rudimentary approach to this problem. That frees you up to develop actual end-game content specific to your game. But before that, I would like to fund a dedicated server for the reference implementation game. As the sole person working on this project, it makes it very difficult to test things in a real-world environment. For instance, one of the things that needs to be tested thoroughly is the collaboration aspect when using the control panel application. Having a dedicated server would also give me the freedom to implement a sandbox reference implementation game that would allow anyone to edit that information and see the result in real time. If both of those stretch goals are achieved, then perhaps it may become a thing to fight the regular reference implementation game versus the sandbox reference implementation game. The other stretch goals are related to the software concerns of this project. Live streaming part of the process will also give people the ability to add their thoughts as the thing is happening. So things that I might miss on the first pass, someone might point out and say, you know, it would be really great if we could do this here, and I'll be able to respond to that while I'm live streaming that part of the process, whether it's the software development of the control panel or the software development of the reference implementation game. As far as any other money raised in addition to that, I will try to either use that to expedite the software development process, to move up the delivery date, or I will attempt to solicit professional quality contributions to the base sort of graphical asset pool that you'll have access to from these tools. At this point, I'd like to briefly explain some of the things you've already seen in this video. For the battle section, you saw the spectate mode where a squire attacked a red mage and where the red mage was able to cast ice on the squire, killing him, and thus ending the battle because there were only 2 characters in that battle. Something to note is that the equipment that they were wearing was visually displayed because of the type of sprite format those individual sprites had. In other words, if you like that feature, you can add more of it into your own sprite formats, and if you don't like that feature, you don't have to add that to your sprite formats, and you still retain control of that feature outside of the engine. For the event section, you got to see a story event designed by someone else and implemented by me. What you saw was the engine running through a conversation stored at the database level and presented to the client at the server level, and it is of course completely up to the client application to determine how to show that information to the user. For instance, one of the character's lines in that conversation was ignored for the purposes of this video. And furthermore, you actually can test these events by just double-clicking them in the file system. For the sprite animation tool section, you got to see what that ice effect used in the battle section looks like behind the scenes. In the Unicode font tool section, you got to see a font font designed for that event in the event section, and you'll get to see that font again a little bit later in the credits crawl, appearing completely differently, but those are the same base images, and because the font tool uses a non-destructive approach, none of that information is lost. In the managerial tools section, you got to see the control panel, and many of its sections are already fully featured, enabling you to add or edit information in the database and in the file system to meaningfully affect your game. And lastly, you saw the formula editor. Later in this project, it will be integrated into the control panel, but the point is that this tool allows you to add your game mechanics to a formula and then to test it and have that be immediately usable by the engine. In closing, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I look forward to delivering this project.
Entonces podemos ver cómo este proyecto de Tecthical es un motor que funciona para generar juegos RPG y continúa siendo desarrollado por Overman, y precisamente voy a postear el video en el grupo y voy a etiquetar a Scott, que es amigo del grupo también, por si quieren hacerle alguna pregunta. Y bueno, ya saben, él habla en inglés, no habla español, pero él hace uso de el traductor, así que pueden hacerle algunas consultas sobre este proyecto que él está realizando, pero ya saben, con todo el respeto y sobre todo utilizando un lenguaje en español lo más limpio posible, sin utilizar muchos modismos, para que no sea difícil para él realizar la traducción de las preguntas que quieren hacerle. Y pues él está de acuerdo en contestar algunas preguntas sobre su proyecto.